My name's Chuck.
And my name's Ann, and we have a 19-year-old son named Scott who has a cognitive disability, and that's why this radar program piqued our interest.
In an encounter where a police officer happens to run across a person like Scott and gives direction, it's not always necessarily interpreted the way it was meant. So for instance, an officer gives direction, Scott's not sure how to react. And now we're very fortunate that Scott's like a gentle giant. He's 6'5". He looks old for his age, and we're very fortunate that he's very passive. But the officer doesn't know that. He looks at a very large individual and says, okay, what do I have here?
Unfortunately, the mental health system has deteriorated tremendously, and a lot less money is focused on mental health than needs to be. Consequently, people don't know where to go.
I think that for people with mental health issues especially, it can be really difficult to trust anybody, especially in a crisis situation where generally people aren't thinking as clearly as they normally might.
Radar's goal is to significantly reduce the likelihood of our officers or other first responders having to use force in a crisis situation. We do this by bringing the circle of support, the family members, the loved ones together with first responders to talk about planning for the next event.
The way I put it is that both police and fire are at the front lines of some of the most challenging social service problems that anyone can really imagine. If we have one piece of information that could open a door for further communication, it's wonderful. And we don't have that now.
It was back in 2010 when my son was arrested for domestic violence, and he has autism, so he doesn't respond in the typical way. I'd never dealt with the law before, the legal system, and it was very upsetting. And so from then on, I became interested in exploring how I could talk to somebody in the police department and talk through this whole thing and figure out, is there some kind of grace allowed for people with disabilities, or how does it all work?
Part of successful response to mental health calls has to be involving all first responders, fire and police, and knowing what to expect and how to prepare for calls involving at-risk individuals.
I think it's very important for everyone that works with young adults who are diagnosed with Asperger's syndrome, autism, ADHD, any social communication issues where the potential for law enforcement intervention is on the table somewhere, to contact local law enforcement and really establish a positive relationship. Because when that positive relationship is established, there is a whole layer of anxiety that just absolutely dissipates.
For me personally, I would want the first responder to know about Scott and know about some things, some trigger points for him that relax him. So for example, Scott is very into trains. He loves to talk about them. So if the police officer or first responder knew that was something that would relax Scott, he would be able to better communicate. He wouldn't be in such a stressful situation.
This radar is a step in the right direction. It's a first step into the pool, if you will, that these people need help. We're going to deal with them with dignity, and we're beginning to bridge the gap.
Officers that are concerned about response to people with mental and behavioral health problems are doing a different kind of policing than we hear about in the media. Police officers that are interested in getting expertise in this kind of work are the officers that generally are extremely empathetic, service-oriented, interested in community connections. The fact that residents of Shoreline have police officers that are interested in this kind of police work is such a benefit. It's so fortunate. These are exactly the kind of officers that you'd want to reach out to and include in your conversations about how to best prepare for crisis events.
As police officers, the men and women who routinely respond to America's front porches in times of crisis, it's up to us to have our fingers on the pulse of our community, recognize what the challenges are, and do our best to find creative and practical solutions.
I work with some of the finest people in the world in the city. My fellow deputies are members of the community. This is not our life. We're not police officers 24/7.
Here I am 31 years later, and I'm finding that this is still what drives me, serving others the best we can. This is what Radar is all about. It's serving our community. It's establishing personal, positive, constructive relationships with members in the community that really need us to serve them, to help them.